Now, if you're going to build your own swing set steering setup, one thing you need to pay attention to is how you're going to pivot the shackles that are basically going to support the swing set between it and the new cross member that we're going to mount into the chassis. Now, although we're just using 1 3/4 DOM, you don't want to just use a poly mount in here. What I'm actually going to do is I have this high quality, dense, basically it's called oiled bronze. So this is basically like a brass bushing that's impregnated with oil. So I'll have it machined down to fit inside this bushing, and they'll basically become the pivot point in the system. These will not wear out like a poly bushing would do, and that just gives you a lot longer life because this steering is going to see a lot of load. You got to remember it's going to be moving every time you turn the steering wheel. So if you just put a leaf spring bushing or something there, it's just going to wear out probably in the first 100 miles. The next thing you need to pay attention to are the bolts that you're going to use. So if you just grab a couple of grade 8 bolts out of your bolt bin and drop them into place, you may think that this might be the right bolt to use because of the fact that it basically fits all the way through and there's threads showing on the other side. But in reality, what you wanted to use is a bolt that's a lot longer because we want to do what's called shanking the bolt. Now, shanking the bolt means that we want the entire pivot structure in this steering system to be on the shank or the strongest part of the bolt. We don't want the threads to be inside the pivot point because that can become a weak point. This is honestly, ideally what you should do on every single piece of suspension on an off-road vehicle and steering. You should always make sure that you basically get the bolt with the correct amount of shank. So basically the entire system is supported on the shank, and then you would trim the bolt on the end to make it the right length. Now the other option you could do is instead of basically cutting down a bunch of bolts is you can get a hold of a company like ARP and they can custom build bolts for you. So once you've figured out the size of the bolt that you need, you can call them and say, this is the length I need, this is the shank I need, this is the head I want, this is how much threads I want, and they will build the bolt for your system. ARP bolts are all 100% made in the USA. They're made of the highest quality steel. They are through hardened, not case hardened, so they're incredibly strong. And the nice thing is all of the threads and the finish is done after heat treat. So you don't have to worry about having any weak points inside the bolt because all of the machining is done after it's fully heat treated. The other nice thing is the stainless bolts, they don't just look good, they're incredibly strong. Their stainless bolts are stronger than a standard grade 8 bolt. So if you're working in a situation where you're worried about rust on the bolts, go ahead and have them build you a custom stainless bolt, and that way you'll have the strength and the good looks.